Hi, welcome to day 5, Heal and Restore. Today is all about relationships, and I am so happy to be here with Katja Cahoon, licensed clinical social worker. I'll give you all a few moments to settle in, join in. We are so excited to be offering this interactive, expert-led session with Katja Cahoon. I'll give you a little overview of what to expect over the next hour, and then I'll turn it over to Katja. So we'll begin with a presentation that Katja will give us called The Mindful Bridge, How Awareness Transforms Communication and Connection. She'll also be leading us through some experiential sessions so that we can really feel an embodied experience of her technique, her approach, and her wisdom. At the end, there will be time for you to ask your questions directly to Katja. You can ask your questions in the chat, or we'll disable the mute feature toward the Q&A session. You can come off mute and join in. Thank you again so much for being here. Katja, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, thank you so much, Suzanne, and welcome to everybody. I'm so happy you're here this morning, or for some of you, it might be afternoon, depending where you are. So, just first of all, a very warm welcome. And before we do anything, before I say a little bit more about my background, I thought I could do a brief grounding exercise that I like to do at the beginning of sessions with people, just to kind of bring us all here. It's Saturday, you might have had a busy week or perhaps already a busy day. Just kind of being present together on this platform. I know this is being, I think, live streamed on YouTube, so people might be joining from a variety of countries and different places. So I invite you, if it feels good to you, to close your eyes. If that doesn't feel good, you're very welcome to keep them open. Maybe just lower your gaze and kind of do whatever you need to feel resourced and safe and comfortable as we do this brief exercise this morning or this afternoon. And just for a moment, touch base with how you're feeling in your body. So that might be, an absence of a feeling, a certain numbness. You might feel your heartbeat. You might feel your breathing a certain way. You might feel some restlessness, or maybe you feel quite settled this morning. Just noticing that and taking a couple of deep breaths with that. You don't have to change anything. Whatever is here right this moment is welcome. And now I invite you to zoom out all the way into outer space. And you don't worry, you're wearing a wonderful suit that keeps you warm and gives you oxygen. So you're floating in outer space in this comfortable suit, and you're watching our beautiful blue planet from high above, from far away. You're seeing the continents, you're seeing the oceans, you're seeing maybe some clouds or swirls of clouds, and you're just seeing this gorgeous planet. Maybe it's moving slowly as you're watching it, and just take it all in from this really far away, beautiful perspective. And then I invite you to zoom in a little bit closer to the continent you live on. We might be on different continents here on this call, in this session. So just zoom into the outline of your continent. And if you don't know exactly what it looks like, just kind of, have a rough idea. It's all okay. We're just getting a little closer to where we are in space and time. And then I invite you to zoom in even closer onto the country that you find yourself in this moment. And again, just noticing the rough outline of it, getting closer and closer to where we are right now in time and space. And then zoom in even closer to the city or village or suburb you live in. And you might not know what that looks like from above, and that is totally okay. Just imagine you coming closer and you seeing maybe some landmarks that you are familiar with from above. You don't have to know it perfectly to come a little closer. And then zoom into the room you find yourself in. It might be your home, it might be an office, you might be outdoors, depending on where you are. And as you do that, come back a little bit to what is around you. You might be hearing sounds. You're hearing the sound of my voice, but there might also be sounds of, you know, the little sounds that are in our space, whether that's the hum of an air conditioner or heater or some traffic outside or noises of people in your space or an animal moving, a pet moving. Yeah, yeah. Or maybe even the sound of your breathing, or a little rustling of clothing when you make a movement. Notice also the scent that is in your space. It might be the absence of a scent, or maybe there is a, you've burned some incense, or you have something, you've just cooked something, or you have a cup of coffee or tea or something in front of you, and you can smell that. And then if you have your eyes closed without opening your eyes, just kind of mentally scan your space and think of a few things that you love in the space you're in. Maybe it's a piece of art, maybe it's, picture or plant or a little item. Maybe it's a pet that's journeying with you in this moment. Might be something else entirely. And then return all the way into your body, really sinking in into your body, back into it. Feel your feet on the ground if you're sitting. Feel your sits bones supported, whether you're sitting or lying. And maybe you let your shoulders get a little heavy, let them sink down a little bit. Let your belly get soft as you're breathing. And notice again the quality of your presence in your body, perhaps compared to the beginning of this session. Is something different? Or is it the same? No judgment again, just welcoming what is there. And then I invite you to take another deep breath and maybe reach your arms overhead if that feels okay in your body. Just stretch a little bit side to side. Let the air go. Maybe with a sigh. Shake your hands out a little bit. Just shake, 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 shake if that feels good. It's always an invitation. If something else feels better, do that. Circle maybe your shoulders, your head a few times. Just letting go of some wiggles. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. Wonderful. Okay, we'll have some time for questions and answers, including about this guided meditation later. For now, I'm going to share my screen just to take you through a little brief presentation. Nothing too much. I know there's a lot of content today. I've already listened to Rick Hansen, amazing presentation. So if you haven't, please listen. Terry Real, some beautiful advice. Annie Lala, also incredible. And my favorite so far, if you only listen to one today, Justin Michael Williams. What an incredible presentation. I took so much from his wisdom, including some really just amazing, pithy sentences like, if you can worry, you can meditate. So if you're curious, listen to his presentation. Okay, just a few words about myself. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I also have a background in business. I work as a ketamine-assisted psychotherapist. I'm a mindfulness, meditation, and yoga teacher. And I work a lot on FDA-approved psychedelic clinical trials with different psychedelics, psilocybin, MDMA, 5-MeO, DMT, and just have a general practice focused on trauma where I use EMDR, mindfulness, ketamine therapy, and more. So what we just did was the coming home meditation. I have that in a slightly different version on my YouTube channel, so you're welcome to do it again. I think you'll be getting those slides. I'm not entirely sure, but if not, take a quick screenshot or just find me on YouTube. So today's topic, as you know, is deepen connection, intimacy, repair communication. So I kind of wanted to summarize some principles of how I work with this, mostly with individual clients. I'm not a couples therapist, but nonetheless, communication is something that matters to all of us, right? We all have to do it. And we all get it wrong sometimes, right? We have the best intentions, and then suddenly we're like, oh, why did I react that way? Why am I going against my values? What is happening in the moment? So, why does communication break down? Right? So, sometimes we lose access, right? We lose access to the connection we have from another human being. We lose access to ourselves, right? And then it's difficult to express our emotions or to express our connection with the person, right? And then that leads to lost connection, misunderstandings, and so on. So we just lose access to what we know. Why do we do that? Right? We become dysregulated. When we become dysregulated, we lose access. Why? Because in dysregulation, fight or flight or shutting down, literally our blood flow goes from our prefrontal cortex, from our executive decision making to our limbs, for example, to gear up to fight or run away, or just shut down, numb, dissociated, right? And then we don't have access to good tools and skills either. So emotional dysregulation often happens because of what happens to us or happened to us in childhood. Right, so some of the speakers talk really eloquently about that in today's section. For example, Terry Real. So if you want to learn more about that, he has a really good perspective on childhood trauma and then these defense mechanisms or protective mechanisms that come as a result of these different childhood traumatic events. And those, of course, can distort communication, right? And lead to reaction or reactivity instead of kind of acting from a grounded state. So, an example could be if you grow up in an overly critical household, overly critical parenting, um, an underlying belief might be I'm bad or it's my fault, right? And out of that, we become defensive, either attacking the other or placating, withdrawing. So I'm kind of summarizing a lot of topics here that are reflected in the different presentations today. Trauma, I already talked about that. So again, many of the speakers today will talk about that and how that can impact communication and lead to breakdown, right? Because suddenly we're triggered. When we're triggered, what does that mean? We're no longer in the present moment. The past becomes activated, and suddenly we're a 6-year-old child or a 12-year-old child, right? So, and a 12-year-old child or a 6-year-old child is not very well, equipped to deal with adult work situations or intimate relationships or friendships. Yeah, and again, these personal experiences, whether it's, capital T trauma, like really, serious trauma, or more what I call everyday trauma or developmental trauma, so the things that are maybe seem more subtle and yet impact us in really big ways, including emotional neglect, including an overly critical upbringing. They shape our narratives, how we perceive ourselves, right? Again, I'm bad, it's my fault, I'm not lovable, and how we perceive others. Everyone's out to get me, right? Or the world is a bad place. So we develop these narratives and we're not even conscious of them. They just run in the background, right? They're just running, 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 and we think we're right, right? And we see only what the narrative allows us to see. And very often in trauma healing, when people start to change the narrative, they realize, oh, wait, there's a whole other set of narratives and experiences that I just haven't been able to see because I was so influenced by the trauma and the beliefs, the experiences, the physical reactions that come from the trauma. And if you're familiar with parts work, so this idea that we contain multitude, that we are consistent of many different parts, for example, child selves or protector selves, often when communication breaks down, we lose our sense of self, our adult self, our grounded self. Tara Brach calls it the wise self or our highest, wisest self. And we again act out of a wounded part or a part of us that's always in attack mode or always in the defensive. So this is just another way to look at communication breakdowns. Suddenly we're not in our highest, wisest self, and a part is taking over and is just executing its script, right? That might be a part that's just saying, okay, everybody's out to get me, so I have to fight them, right? And we can already see how that's not helpful for communication. So what do we do, right? What are these pathways to connection, to reconnection with ourselves and to reconnection with others? And again, many of the speakers today will talk about that. Rick Hanson comes from sort of a mindfulness lens. Annie Lala talks a lot about taking responsibility for our own emotions, right? And Justin Michael Williams talks a lot about this sort of holding our inner wounded child with compassion and care, and gentleness. So let's look at these three pathways. And there's, of course, much, much more to this topic, right? I'm covering something big in, a few minutes here. But defenses to awareness. So awareness is always the first step, right? If we're not aware of our pattern, they're just being executed, right? They're just running like a computer script in the background, like a computer program in the background. It's just doing what it's doing, right? So becoming aware of our unconscious patterns is the first step. That could be therapy, that could be mindfulness, that could be coaching, that could be psychedelics, right? That could be yoga. Any number of things can help us become aware. Bibliotherapy, which really is a fancy word for just reading a lot, right? And having that help increase our awareness. And I particularly love mindfulness because in the way I was trained is mindfulness has two wings. There's the wing of awareness and there's the wing of compassion, right? A bird with two wings. It can't fly just with one. So becoming aware with a sense of compassion or friendliness, or in other words, without judgment, right? Because we can all become aware and be like, you did that thing again. That was horrible. Why did you do that? And that's typically not helpful. So really having that compassion, that friendliness piece in there is important. And then the other thing, and Rick Hanson talks about that, not in this presentation, but in his books and so on, is realizing that we have a negativity bias, right? He says positive experiences are like Teflon, they just slide off, and negative experiences are like Velcro, they stick to us. So we have that. It's adaptive in a way, right? When we were still fighting saber tigers or, looking for foraging, it was more helpful for us to remember the poisonous plants or where the saber tigers are or how to fight them than, maybe the beautiful vista, right? So negativity bias is evolutionarily speaking a really adaptive and helpful thing in our modern world for most of us on this call, not for everybody on this beautiful planet, but for most of us on this call, I would think we're, mostly in safe situations speaking physically, right? We don't have to fight saber tigers, hopefully not in a war zone, right? But for some of us, that is still true. So for most of us, that negativity bias is still there, right? And that now shows up in work situations where we remember the one negative thing that our boss told us and forget the five positives he told us. The one positive thing our partner said to us or a friend, and we focus on that and forget the five positive things they've done or said for us, right? So recognize that that's negativity bias. It's not your fault, right? We all have that to an extent. But we can, through mindfulness practices, work to shift that and be more mindful and present with the positive experiences. One of the words that's used for that is savoring. And that comes from positive psychology, the idea of savoring, where we're really integrating the positive by making it stronger and lingering with it for a moment. Interrupting unhelpful narratives, right? And once you become aware of them, sometimes I will, for example, say to myself, here we go again, that one. Hello, old friend. Right? So that way of speaking to the narrative as if it's an old friend, right? That's at some point maybe served a purpose, helps to interrupt the pattern. Now I'm not just going with it. Now I have a little bit of distance. And Viktor Frankl, who's written an incredible book about his experiences in multiple concentration camps, has this quote about stimulus and response. Stimulus, right? Something someone says, and our response. And the bigger the pause between the two, the greater our ability to act more adaptively, more in alignment with our values. Cultivate compassion, right? This is always a big theme, and all the speakers I've listened to so far today is that compassionate perspective for ourselves and also for the other person, right? Unless they're an outright narcissist or otherwise psychopath, they're likely coming from their own childhood wounding, from their own, woundedness, and that's just showing up in the relationship. Choosing understanding over assumption. I think I forget which interview it was in, but there was this sort of, do I want to be right or do I want to be connected? Right? So do I want to be right or do I want to be connected? Is a big area in communication. Right? It's easy to be on the side of I'm right, I know I'm right. Right? But that takes the connection away because the other person likely has the same and they're saying, well, no, I'm right. Right? So, and then we get the one-upmanship. Contraction to openness. So, contraction, again, if we think about the nervous system, when we're in distress, then our nervous system contracts. We shut down, or we contract to, spring into action to fight. So, when you feel contraction in your body, that's a really good sign that you're disconnecting. And then, even shifting your physiology, taking a brief guided meditation, taking some deep breaths, changing even your body and noticing, oh, my shoulders are up by my ears. Well, shoulders are not earrings, so they shouldn't be up by our ears. My hands are like this, right? My stomach is all clenched. I'm hunched forward. What happens if I change, if I take a breath, if I ground myself? And then, of course, any kind of inner work, therapy, mindfulness, psychedelics invite softness and healing of our own patterns. Mindfulness fosters the sort of openness and the ability to be with difficult material, right? Again, expanding our ability to be in an open, curious, grounded state. And then embracing the journey of reconnection, right? If we connect with ourselves, it is easier to connect with others. So that's really always where it begins. Uh, I'm going to skip this slide just because I want to have enough time for our guided practice. But really, so practices for repair. Let's say your connection, your communication was disconnected, there was a break. And what can we do? Again, I look to the speakers today who speak about that in much greater detail. But one of the big ones that I took from Terry Reel's speech and presentation, and that I encourage my clients to is pause. When you notice you're dysregulated, either into fight or flight or shutting down, take a break, right? Pausing is really important. Step back. This is not dissociation. This is not, disconnecting from the person. It's a conscious decision. Hey, give me 10 minutes, give me 20 minutes. I need to breathe, right? I need to reground myself. Regulate yourself. Nothing good can come out of a dysregulated state, right? When I'm in fight or flight, there's just no good communication to be had, right? Because I'm not there in my nervous system. My nervous system literally won't allow it, right? Because all my nervous system is seeing is danger, 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 danger. You got to fight or you got to run away. Right? Remember, our nervous system's job is not to make us happy. It is to help us survive, right? And likewise, when I'm dissociated, shut down, it's just like the hopelessness takes over. There's no point. Why should I say anything? I've tried so often. I'm just going to disappear into myself, right? And then there is no constructive connection possible. And all of that really requires self-intimacy, meaning that we have to get to know our parts. We have to get to know our narratives. We have to get to know our patterns, right? Our beliefs, our experiences, and work on those. And that's a little bit the self-responsibility that Annie talks about in her presentation today. That's a really important, it starts with us, right? That's really important. Okay, let's do building on that. Let's do a second guided meditation. This is a little bit different. It's really an awareness creating meditation or practice. And then we'll have plenty of time for questions and answers and for a little bit of discussion together. So I invite you again. Actually, I'm going to take the slides off. Yeah. So I'm going to invite you again to find a comfortable space to go inward. You're welcome to close your eyes, but you do not have to. If it feels more comfortable or safe to have your eyes open, maybe soften your gaze, that is totally welcome. And I know I've talked a lot, I've thrown a lot at you. So just for a moment, clear your mind by taking a couple of nice deep breaths in and sighing the air out, just letting it go. You're all on mute, so you can make some noise. And if some movement feels good, just wiggling a little bit or circling your head, that is totally welcome. Resource yourself. You know, we don't have to sit still in guided exercises. It's okay to move, right? Permission to be you as we're doing this work, as we're on this journey together. And just notice your body. As a first step, like we did the first time, first round, just notice your body without judgment, right? What's there? You can name it relaxation, tension, numbness, presence, whatever it is, just notice it and just become a little bit aware of it. And then really slow your exhales down. Right, so slowing them down in a way that's comfortable for you, of course, maybe lengthening them a little bit. And you can even imagine as you breathe and slow your exhales down, you're kind of sinking a little bit more into yourself. You're feeling a little bit more grounded and rooted. And as you're doing that, maybe based on this brief talk that I did, maybe an emotional state came up. Maybe something came up. Could be an activation, could be a memory, could be an emotion, could be a recognition. It could be even something like doubt or disagreement is also a state and it's also welcome, right? You might be like, no, that was a load of baloney, Katja. What are you saying? Right? Just name it and acknowledge it that it's here. You just acknowledge that state is here, that reaction is here, that association is here, that activation, whatever it might be, is welcoming it. And just being curious about it if you can, just noticing, hey, is this a new one? Is this a surprise? Or is this an old friend? Is this something that's been here before? If it's an old friend, you can say, hello, I know you. And if it's new, you can also say, oh, hey, thanks for showing up. Thanks for showing your face. Now I know you. Now I can get to know you. And feel into, or even ask outright, what what do you need when you feel this? What does this part of you need? If you like working in parts, if that calls to you, what does this part of you need? Or what do you need? Really just allowing whatever comes up to come up. It might be a typical teenager response and that says, nothing, leave me alone. It might be a little child that needs a hug. It might be a pod that needs someone on their side. Yeah, and beautiful. I see someone hugging themselves. Feel free to do that. Give yourself a self hug or put a hand on that space in your body where you feel that most. Yeah, and just validate that part or that aspect of you, what it needs. Breathe a soft, gentle breath into that. And if it feels good and accessible, maybe even a friendly word to that part of you, or that aspect of you, or that emotion. It can be as simple as I see you, I hear you. Thanks for being here. Or maybe it's something deeper. Yeah. And if it's difficult to do that, think of a loved one or a dear friend, what you might say to them if they were feeling something like this. And then extend some of that to yourself. And welcoming all emotions and physical states as you're doing this. And even I'm always a fan of welcoming if cynicism or doubt or if this is too woo-woo, if that comes up, welcome that as well. That is totally okay. And if tenderness comes up, welcome the tenderness. And if tears are coming, welcome the tears. And if laughter or smiles are coming, welcome that. You made contact with a part of you, an aspect of you, something tender. And that is a moment of mindfulness, a moment of presence. And then see if that part of you, that emotion, that aspect of you needs anything else in this moment. Trust your inner wisdom, trust your highest, wisest self. And take another nice deep cleansing breath in, fill your lungs, make yourself big, maybe reach your arms overhead, like get really big. Take up space if that feels good, and then exhale your arms down. If it feels good, let's do that again. Nice deep inhale. If it feels good, make yourself big, reach up high, and then ooh, let it all out. I'm going to briefly go back to the presentation and then we'll open it up. So this little exercise is in the slides. I hope you will have access to them. If not, reach out to me. I'll send it to you. You can find me just by Googling Katja Cahoon, Cahoon. That's my last name. And we had some breakout prompts, but we decided not to do that for now, just to open it up to general questions and answers. That seems to have flowed better in the previous 4 sessions because this is kind of a new thing for Heart Mind Institute, which I super welcome. They're such an amazing organization. But here's some contact information. You can find me on YouTube. I also have a free 1 hour mindfulness for psychedelics training on my YouTube channel. I have a website. I have a small Instagram account. And I'm on LinkedIn. So always to find me if you want to stay in touch. Okay, that's enough self-promotion. Let's stop that and let's open it up for questions, observations, comments, thoughts. It's all welcome. Use the raised hand function if that works for you, so you can find all your controls at the bottom of your screen. So use that function. If you're a little shy, you can also put your question, your comment, or your reaction in the chat. And then we also have the reaction function. Suzanne just pointed it out. The reaction function, you can put little hearts or little congratulations if you agree with someone or like something someone said or want to support them in what they've shared. So you are welcome to make use of all these functions. So with that, I'll step back and see what you have, what you would like to ask or share. And Rose, you jumped right up. Come on in. And you have to unmute yourself, remember?
Hmm.
Yay!
Oh, hello.
Hi.
Nice to be here, and thank you. Missed the few, I missed the first few minutes, but I was very happy to be able to join in and in this last section, as you were guiding us through some of the things that came up were a feeling of failure for, in the past, not knowing how to regulate myself and leading to a whole lot of breakdown in communication. And but then as we went through it further, I realized, well, I can recognize that yes, that's how I felt, but now I can see, okay, what do you need? And some reassurance, some companionship, and self-forgiveness that I did not know these things. I was in a situation in early childhood and for many years that brought me to this point. And so I can have compassion that I'm here and also hopefulness that I'm not staying here. I can learn these skills. I am learning these skills and I can connect more with others and I will. And so that combination of uh, just the awareness, the recognition, the forgiveness, and the hopefulness for going forward. Um, that was kind of what my journey through this meditation.
Oh, Rose, thank you so much for sharing that. And I just want to acknowledge that feeling of failure and just kind of, yeah, I see some hearts. Who else has felt that way in the past, right? Who else has failed? Me, I'm raising my hand first, right? I see some others, right? I see some hearts. Yes, and what I think was so beautiful that you found that compassion side, right? You became aware, and then the compassion, the self-compassion, and the hopefulness came in, which beautiful. Thank you for sharing. That's so inspiring. You're getting lots of hearts. So thank you so much. Yeah. Mm. Um, Kendra, you raised your hand next. And
Yes.
yes, here you
Yeah, that meditation or practice was so effective for me. Something that came up was sort of an ongoing problem I have with a friend where I'm feeling she's been a friend a long time, and I've been feeling like, oh, I don't like you anymore. You're being so controlling, blah, blah, blah. And it just haunts me. I mean, she just comes up in my day, in my thoughts. And so that came up during the meditation, and I was feeling like, oh God, stop haunting me. And then I realized, wait a minute, Kendra, you're haunting you by hanging on, by judging her and making it an issue. And then it was like, okay, so what's under this? As you were guiding us, it was like, so what's really going on? Look inside yourself. And I found this little child who didn't feel safe, and that also maybe is rooted in a childhood that was difficult. And so then it was, well, what do you need from me? What I think this was part of your guide, part of your prompts. And she just needed to know she was safe. She needed to be hugged. And so I hugged her. And then there was a real sort of release, sort of a lightening. And I just started to laugh because she was the sweet little playful child was able to come out, she was able to be seen. I think I wasn't seen or heard. And so I still go back to that defensive thing. Anyway, so I learned so much from this, plus just got a good feeling of being lighter and less burdened by all that. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Kendra, so much. And I could see your smile kind of emerging as I was
Yeah,
guiding
yeah.
this. I was like,
I was
oh,
like,
something.
oh, someone turned on the light. Holy cow, this is great. Yeah.
Oh, and you're getting the hearts as well. And
Oh,
you
thank you.
know what I think again is so cool is that when we do this kind of alchemy, right? Pardon me. Something in our body shifts, right? You said you felt lighter, less burdened, I think, if I recall correctly, right? So we can really feel a physical shift with that. And that tells us that our nervous system is responding, right? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Lorinda, did I say that correctly? Oh, and you're on mute.
Yes, yes. I also, to add a little bit onto the feeling of like having the burden lifted when it comes to dynamics with other people, and also to tie in how you had mentioned choosing understanding over assumption. Sometimes we unfortunately can't understand where another person's coming from, and whether that's from a lack of communication, a lack of like strong relationship. It could be a person that we're running into in passing, that there's a conflict that comes up. And this was something that I had recently talked about with my therapist, who is a somatic therapist. She specializes in IFS parts work and everything. Incredible woman. And she had mentioned that when you think of the gesture we make for I don't know, we like shrug our shoulders and go like this. She was like, when you think about it, you're really lifting the weight of needing to know off of your shoulders. And that it's okay not to know, and feel safe and like happy that you don't have to put the work into understanding everything and lifting that weight off of your shoulders.
Amazing. Thank you. I love that you spoke to that and shared your wisdom, right? This is what I think is so amazing about groups is yeah, understanding isn't always possible, or we don't even need it, right? We can lift that weight. I love that you shared that. Thank you. I think that's so profound and so important, right? And yeah, look at how the wisdom of the group is kind of emerging, and through you guys sharing, we're adding a whole other element to this. And that I think is so powerful, right? We don't know each other. I'm assuming you guys don't know each other, right? And yet this beautiful discussion is emerging. So thank you, Lorinda, and everybody else who's shared so far. Yeah, I'm just gonna check the chat if there's anything in there. Nope. Okay. Yeah, anybody else got something they want to ask or share? And by the way, if you didn't have a pleasant experience or positive experience with this guided meditation, that is welcome too. And if you feel comfortable sharing, it's doesn't all have to be pleasant or positive. Sometimes we're grappling with something, we're struggling. Magda, I hope I said that right. And you might have to unmute yourself. That's always the challenge with Zoom.
Okay.
Yes, here you are.
Um,
Yay.
Here
Hi.
I am. I've heard what you said, and actually, unfortunately, I believe I had to deal with some narcissistic people. So the thing is, how do you, because how do you decide they are not coming from their wounded self, but they are simply, they have this type of personality where no matter how much understanding you show, or no matter how you try to make it work, you have no chance, because that's who they are. They actually have a problem.
Ooh, that's a big and important question. Yeah. And if you're in that situation, my heart goes out to you. And it can be so challenging and maybe goes beyond this brief workshop. One thing I want to recommend right away is there's a great book called Stop Walking on Eggshells. That will, I think, really help clarify in more detail some of these questions, right? So, and then also how to communicate with a person like that, right? Which might be different, which might look different. Because sometimes when we're dealing with a true narcissist or true personality disorder, right, antisocial narcissism, borderline is a little bit different, personality disorder. Um, us revealing something can be used against us, right? Being vulnerable, being intimate can become weaponized, right? So that might call for something very different. That might call for very different boundaries with that person, right? And one of the hallmarks of a true narcissist really is the lack of empathy or the inability to feel empathy. And that I think is a sort of a good thing to see. Can that person, not just with me, but in general, have they ever expressed or felt empathy, right? I don't want to be too reductionist because that's dangerous, because sometimes the impulsivity of ADHD, for example, can look like lack of empathy, but it's not. It's just the impulsivity. Or trauma can dissociate us to a point where we're not feeling a lot of or expressing a lot of empathy because we're just so overwhelmed by the trauma, right? Or an anxiety disorder can be so overburdening. So I think that's important to recognize as well. But the lack of empathy or the inability to feel empathy, that is really helpful to pay attention to. And then I would say to go a little bit deeper with that book recommendation, that might be a good starting point.
Okay, thank you. Because, I mean, from what I've read, and that's also the challenge, they can be pretty chameleonic, let's put it like this, in general. So they can present themselves as very friendly or whatever. They can take different appearances, and then it becomes even more challenging to spot them.
Right, exactly. And they'll test the boundaries. I think this is another thing with narcissism, that testing the boundaries. How far can I go? How far can I go? How far can I go? Right. And to really be mindful, are they doing that? Are they taking advantage of me in that way? I also have a comment here from Taya. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. As an 18-year-old girl with high functioning autism and ADHD, I've learned that understanding and assuming can be unsafe. Yes, I fully validate that. I have the impulse to understand and explain everybody's behavior, and that can hurt me and cross my boundaries. ADHD saves me from the complete blindness of autism that makes me a prey for people with narcissistic tendencies. So, yeah, trying to find that balance between being understanding and aware now. Thank you for speaking to that. And yes, right, that is so true. That is so true to again, if someone's consistently taking advantage of, or we're spending so much energy and time on understanding others and it's never reciprocated, right? Really, really important. Thank you. Again, look at the wisdom coming out in this group. This is incredible. So yeah, and others are validating and yeah. Okay, and then we had Jan G posted, thank you for the meditation and discussion. And then I think you posted a link potentially to another meditation app, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, Magda, I hope that answered your question a little bit. And I think Taya's contribution is really important and beautiful. Yeah, Lorinda, I see your comment. I'd love to give you more space. Let's see if there's anybody else who wants to ask something or share something in the chat or in the room. And Rachel, hello, come on.
Sorry about that. And I would go on camera, but I'm having a bloody nose situation right now. And I promise you that nobody wants to see what's going on.
Oh my gosh,
So
I hope you're okay.
I am totally fine. It just is, it's winter, dry air, and it caught me a little bit off guard, but was really happy to be able to join this and just always appreciate your just wisdom and meditations. But wanted to share, and this kind of resonated even more so with some of the shares that have already happened, is what came up for me is I recently, just in the last couple of days, ended a therapeutic relationship that has just had a lot of crossover for me, but I kept noticing myself wanting to respond. And so what came up for me in the meditation just now was just like this compassion for myself, and even more just like, oh, of course, like you still want to explain yourself, but really looking at just like it's the pattern recognition. Like I'm actually like in a place where I'm recognizing the pattern. So it doesn't even matter who the other person is or like how they're showing up, is that I've been able to find then within myself the pattern, or recognizing my own pattern of reactivity or response to, a certain type of behavior or a dynamic that exists. And then, I just like, yeah, just like deep compassion and for like, little Rachel who just, is kind of in so many ways relearning things, but didn't have the safety to have things like anger or, who had to over explain herself, and finding that, what, like I chose not to respond or use words to explain something that got triggered, and finding peace too in this last exercise of being able to sit with that. So just wanted to share that, and thank you guys so much.
Oh, Rachel, thank you. Rachel and I, by the way, for disclosure, are friends. We know each other, so she came here to support, and I'm so happy that you got something out of it, Rachel. And speaking to, I think the point of relationships with therapists or coaches or guides can be hugely impactful and hugely triggering, right? So that can be a really challenging situation as well to let go of that, right? And the dependency we might feel, right? Or the unmet needs that might arise in the therapeutic relationship. So I'm really, really grateful that you spoke to that, Rachel. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Taya. Some more about narcissistic tendencies and letting go of those relationships. Okay. Yeah, amazing. Lorinda, I don't see any other raised hands. Feel free to jump in again. And, guys, have a look at the chat as well, because there's a lot of good interactions in there and lovely feedback. But Lorinda, feel free to share. Oh,
Sorry, it wasn't letting me unmute. Yesterday, I think it was yesterday's presentation by Dr. Wandrea, talking about how she had just briefly mentioned procrastination is the fear of visibility, but that like really sank deep within me, because I find myself procrastinating quite a bit, especially when it comes to like my bigger personal goals. And during this meditation today, that came back into my mind, and I started sitting with that. Okay, like what part of me is holding on to that procrastination? What is it that, why am I afraid of being seen? Why am I afraid of being perceived? And I had like this experience come back to me from when I think I was about 4 years old, and it was actually this time of the year where I was a little girl at like a Christmas party for like my dad's company, and they had like a magician show, and I was laughing in the middle of it and giggling, and that little girl giggle that just erupted the entire like audience in laughter, because it was like a contagious laugh. And I remember feeling like so proud of myself for like being perceived in such a positive way. But at that same time period of my life, whenever I was feeling a difficult emotion or, needing some sort of comfort or going to someone with a problem, I was treated like a problem. So I had this like dissonance of like, everyone loved me when I was being seen in like a joyful state, but no one, like I was like, you're a problem when I had a problem. So I wasn't ever really perceived in my fullness, and I think that really like weighed on me. And yeah, it was just, it finally came up for me. I never really realized where that might have begun and where that wound might have started, but this meditation really helped me come to the bottom of that.
thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for your vulnerability in sharing that. And I see, other people's thumbs up and hearts, and I have a feeling this is resonating with others, which is sort of making me want to just take a moment now that we're nearing the end of our hour together of just taking a moment and feeling into this shared space. Right? We can see some of you on camera, others are just present with their energy or in the chat, but just feeling into this shared space that we created here for the last hour with all the things that you shared, that you brought, and even over Zoom, we can feel a connection, right? We can feel a kinship. We can feel some shared experiences and really supporting each other, right? Which I think is the power of groups, right? It's not one person, sharing their wisdom or being the guide, but it's all of you, all of us co-creating the space together through presence, through sharing, through listening. And just acknowledging that for a moment, right? We all, I think, have parts that feel alone at times. Now, I'm just recognizing, oh, okay. And those parts might still be there for some of you. But maybe there was just a moment of like, oh, I was seen or heard, or part of me was seen or heard. And acknowledging that and sending some gratitude to the group for that experience. Okay, well, I think that brings us to the end. Thank you so much. This was incredible. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here on a Saturday. Thank you for what you shared. Thank you for listening. And I hope you can carry some of that with you into the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Katja, for leading us through this experience, for the beautiful guided meditations, for the presentation and sharing your wisdom. Thank you so much to everyone for your questions, for co-creating this space with us. We are so grateful for this experience together. This is recorded and available for replay through tomorrow morning if you want to rewatch this. And of course, if you purchase lifetime access to the Heal and Restore experience, you will have access to this recording session as well. Please join us tomorrow. I'll be leading a guided meditation at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. I hope you enjoy all of the beautiful, amazing talks for you lined up today, and we'll see you soon.